And good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes, and we are chock full of guests here for this evening. Coming up in a few minutes at about 6:20, we'll be joined by Newman Catholic High School boys basketball coach Jeff Waldvogel. Of course, the Cardinals heading to the state tournament, taking on Royal in a Division V state semifinal on Friday morning, a game that will be broadcast right here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Then at 6:40, we'll be joined by the former head coach at DC Everest on the girls' side, a man that took his team to the state championship game a few years back, Matt Bullis. He was at state this weekend. We'll talk about what happened at girls' state and about high school girls basketball here in central Wisconsin with the former Evergreen head coach at approximately 6:40. Then at 7 o'clock, it's our student-athlete guest for this week, again from Newman Catholic, as they are the team that's still playing right now at the state tournament this coming weekend. Jackson Fender. Fender, of course, a multi-sport athlete, has been having a terrific school year, and we'll have him on at 7 o'clock. And then at approximately 7:20, with sports girls basketball writer Norbert Durst will have more talk on what happened this past weekend at the girls' state tournament. So all that and a whole bunch more here tonight. Our penultimate show, as next week will be the final show of our season, and for the first time this year, since Jeff Gress has come in, there's actual sunlight as we start at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, it's weird. I want to make sure I'm in the right place. It's different outside, but again, a very exciting time of the year with the boys and girls basketball state championship.
We'll talk a lot about the girls state tournament coming up with Matt Bullis and Norbert Durst, but let's talk about what happened in the sectionals last week on the boys' side. Let's start off with Division V. Newman Catholic last Thursday night, a game played at Wausau West High School, took on Pacelli. Top two seeds in that part of the bracket, and Newman Catholic was stellar. The Cardinals came out, jumped out to an 18-2 lead. It was 42-16 at halftime, and Newman cruised to a 79-58 victory. Isaac Seidel, I think he got the old Big High School Sports Show bump, was on the show last Wednesday and came out and hit 9 3-pointers, had 31 points, also pulled down 13 rebounds in that game. Mason Prey added 22 points for Newman. Jaden Owie, who is a sophomore, big kid, he's going to be a good one for Pacelli over the next couple of years. He led the way with 16 points, but in that game, Newman, I know you were there, really an impressive performance. Coming out, taking charge early was Newman.
Well, right, and there's always all the factors involved. There's the nervousness and the pressure to become what you feel your team and your program should be, and I think for Newman to step up and just play outstanding, they're so dangerous, and I think their balanced attack that they have between the guard play where you've got unlimited scoring. You can go, so many of them can hit from outside the arc, and then they'll bait you in and get you into the basket and get a good drive or finish on both the right or left side. And then I think it's big too the way Connor and Eli play in the inside for him. I mean, Connor's a double guy and just a physical presence. He can switch up and guard a big, and he can guard a guard and shut him down, and just a solid defender. And I think that one of the biggest factors that is how Eli Gustafson has really come into his own, from the rebounding to the scoring to the defense he played on the big guys over the weekend in the sectionals, both games. I just thought has been an ultimate factor in really making Newman, just possibly the strongest team that they can become. And against Pacelli, it was, you give Pacelli credit for being there, you give Pacelli credit for playing, but it was 18-2, and I turned to the person next to me and said, "This game's done. They're just not going to put up enough points, and Newman's going to keep coming at them," and it was, and they played spectacular and did an outstanding job.
One final note about Pacelli, they were a young team. I mean, that's something that kind of jumps out. I think one senior in the starting lineups, a couple of sophomores. It looks like a team that should be set up pretty well if everybody stays around. You never know these days, but if they come back with the production that they had this season, they could be a dangerous team in that bracket next year.
Well, right, and everybody from the coaches to the players are going to evaluate things that they got to do to take the next jump and to take down a team of Newman's caliber as they continue to make it farther and farther in the playoffs. But nothing can be slighted for what they accomplished. I mean, I think it was 24-4, 24-3, that overall record somewhere in there. Yep. And they finished really well. I thought Awi in the middle is a special player. He's a big kid. He uses his body well all over the boards, can alter a lot of shots, and I think he's going to be a scoring threat. So I think with them, they're going to be one of the major teams in that set. It's a no-brainer they're going to be one of the major teams. But I do think, one of the things that we bring up with coaches a lot and talk about is that strength of schedule. And that's the next step, is you go out and find those teams games, because I really think it has made Newman what they've been tested in so many different elements, from overtime comebacks to playing better teams in higher divisions. It just prepares you to not be mentally knocked around. And I think because Newman did that Pacelli a little bit that night. And
they're going to, I think, for Pacelli, maybe take a page out of the notebook like Lakeland, because their conference is not right now a very strong conference. They went undefeated in the CWC South. I imagine it's going to be kind of similar next year for them. They have to, as you said, go out there, find these games to get them ready for a game like they had Thursday night.
Yeah, it's a big deal to be tested with a lot of adverse situations that can happen on the basketball courts, so that when it becomes could become your final moment, you're ready to push through that and not make your season end. And I think that's the next step, is that strength of schedule.
Newman then advanced to the sectional final, and they knocked off Gibraltar 66-54, a game held at Seymour High School. Mason Prey had 24 points. Isaac Seidel, 21. Eli Gustafson, as you talked about, really big, had 11 points, pulled down 15 rebounds as well. Braden City had 17 for Gibraltar. And again, that was Cardinals had to battle. I mean, it was not a case where they were able to roll the ball out there. Gibraltar, again, a number 8 seed, a team that made a bit of a great run throughout the course of the postseason. They fell behind by 9 at halftime, but then they battled back. I think got to within 4 at one point in the second half, but the Cardinals able to make the plays when they needed to, and did what they basically been lining up all season long, earned that sectional championship.
And for the Cardinals, I give them credit. A lot of, again, when you've been tested and played against a lot of different styles, a lot of different basketball teams, and what they're able to do in different areas of the state, they were ready for that. I think if the stats stand correct of what I've heard or saw, I think they hit 2 or 3 threes only that game. Newman did. So they didn't. A lot of times they can beat you from the arc. They're great outside shooters, but that game they didn't have to. And Gibraltar, give them credit. They came at him a couple times, and Newman just withstood it. And I think Newman, when they can get that lead, get out front, they're a hard team to beat, because they shoot the ball well with the guard play from the free throw line. Because of the ball handlers they have and the guys that are confident with that basketball on the floor, you can't press them. So if they can get that lead and you got to play catch up, it's very difficult to beat Newman in any sense of the way. But for Gibraltar came at him. Newman beat him back down when they took those blows, and for them, to their credit, they just kept chipping away and made some plays when they had to keep Gibraltar at bay. And I thought again, Eli's controlling inside of the boards. Mason made some plays when he had to. That were big drives to the basket or tough finishes, and they took the stuff that Gibraltar tried to throw at him, and because that was probably one of the more inside games. Gibraltar wanted everything at the rim. And so you had to stay out of foul trouble, and you had to control those baskets once they got one shot up to not give them a second one. And I thought Newman did a great job of that. There wasn't a lot of second chance opportunities.
Division 4, last Thursday night, sectional semifinal in Marshfield, and Auburndale pulled off the upset. After losing the Marathon twice during the regular season, Auburndale rallied past the Red Raiders 55-47. It looked like Marathon was going to do what they had done previously. They led 31-20 at halftime. But then Auburndale outscored Marathon 35-16 in the second half. Alex Wilfert had 16 points. Mason White Eagle, 16. Lucas Yeski, 12 for Auburndale. Tyler Underwood, 16. Grant Warren, 14 points, 14 rebounds. Drew Love, 12 for Marathon. Boy, again, you have to give a big tip of the cap to Auburndale to be able to do that, to come from double digits down against a really good Marathon team to pull out the win. And at the same time, boy, you feel for Marathon. They had such a good year. They had such an excellent team. I mean, they were a team that obviously has Grant Warren putting up big numbers, but boy, they played so well together all season long. And I think this game may have been an example of where during a playoff game, when things get sideways, things can go real sideways. That's the combination of a big crowd, a combination of moving a step closer to state. Boy, sometimes the moment can get really big, and I don't think Marathon was able to handle it maybe the way that they had during the course of the season.
Well, yeah, and for Marathon, tip of the cap, conference champions, 23-4 record, playing in a familiar place again in those sectional games, in the sectional semi, and they had, they would never be overconfident or that they're not going to have a game out of Auburndale. They know Coach Jacobson and his group knows what's coming and knows how hard that's going to be. But they've taken them 2 out of 3 times, which is already a feat to sweep an Auburndale team that's solid in 3rd place in your conference. And I think you hit it. I talked to a couple people this past weekend at some AAU stuff, and there were some Marathon parents. They said they weren't moving the ball like they should. They weren't taking care of the ball sometimes like they should. And I think that those pressure moments get to you, and all of a sudden a couple guys that are reliable shooters on your team miss a basket, or you're maybe Grant Warren makes a mistake that he's not accustomed to making. I'm not saying he did, but if those stuffs happen, they can rattle a team a little bit in that big environment. It's noisy. It's hard to play catch up. And for Auburndale, you got to give them credit. Those senior guys came out, and again, that's why we say the danger in the seniors that are graduating and done, and they got a huge performance out of double digits out of some of those big names, Wilfart, Yeski, and Mason White Eagle. Those guys just come out and put points on the board and made a difference, and Auburndale won that game and did well against Marathon that night.
And then in the sectional final Saturday, Auburndale looked like they may do it again against a very good St. Mary Catholic team. Auburndale led 35-32 at halftime, but in the end, St. Mary Catholic pulled out a 75-70 win. Mason White Eagle, big day, 25 points. Alex Wilfart had 15. Caden Weinferter, 10. Daniel Griffith had 24, but big numbers for St. Mary Catholic. In a tight game, they made their free throws. Griffith, 12 of 13 at the line himself. The team was 16 of 18. But Auburndale, again, battled a St. Mary Catholic team that beat Newman by more than 10 points early in the season, but came up just a little bit short of earning what would have been quite a trip to state.
Right. Well, against a very good basketball team in Division IV. I watched the game that Newman played St. Mary's, and they're built like Newman. They got a lot of size and length. They've got a multitude of athleticism on the floor. They're built at a lot of different positions where they're tough, and they can shoot the ball real well and real often from that 3-point line and have a high success rate. And they're another team you don't want to follow at the end because they'll knock their free throws down. So for Auburndale, to go battle that skill set and a team that's done very well and been ranked all year, won their conference, I think, and just an outstanding. Right, and they're deservingly well going to state. Auburndale, 75-70 is what I'm getting at is good on the scoreboard, even though it's still not the win.
Absolutely. I mean, really, it shows again that conference is so good. It felt like Newman and Marathon maybe a little ahead of Auburndale, but in the end, Auburndale able to make that great run. And St. Mary Catholic is the number 1 seed in D4 as well. So again, that showed really a great effort by Auburndale. And then finally in Division II, New London and Mosinee for the second time. Those teams met in the first game of the season. Mosinee won by 2, but the second time around in the sectional semifinal, New London held off Mosinee 61-57. Mosinee rallied from an 11-point deficit to tie the game at 50, but then Mosinee went more than 3 minutes without a point, and New London regained the lead and was able to win the game. Keegan Jerschley, 22 points. Davin Stoffel, 20 points, 10 boards. Kyle Wisniewski had 30 for New London. It was a different game than the first time around. The first time around was a high-scoring affair. Mosinee actually played, I think, much better defense in this game, but offensively just did not have what they'd had for much of the year.
Well, right, and if I got some of my numbers correct, well, first off, I talked to some of the parents, and here's the time of year with injuries and sicknesses, and Mosinee, they're not going to make excuses for themselves. They're not going to do that, but they had a couple guys that were sick and out of the game, or playing a little bit under the weather, and that makes a difference for your team going in. They lost 61-57 in that game, and they were out. I think to Mosinee's credit, they outscored them in the second half, 33-29. So they came back a little bit, but down by 9 made it a little bit different game there. And for Mosinee, Stoffel averaging that almost a double-double and 18 points and 9 rebounds. It had just been a kind of a world beater all game, and they went after it and gave everything they got. But in the end of the day, just came up a little short. And I know there's the first game where they won that one after being down by a little bit in the first half. And it's just, you see different teams at the end of the year, and it makes a little bit different. So I'm sure one that Mosinee would want back, but unfortunately didn't go their way that night.
And also in the sectional semi last Thursday, the other great northern team left, Medford. fell again to La Crosse Central. La Crosse Central's just been a thorn in the side of Medford the last few years. La Crosse Central beat Medford 57-41. Logan Baumgartner had 21 points and 7 rebounds, but was just 3 of 15 from three-point range. In fact, the team was only 3 of 23 from behind the arc. Charlie Kleist had 10 points as well for Medford. Henry Meyer had 23 for La Crosse Central, but again, 3 of 23 from behind the arc against La Crosse Central. It kind of says it all right there.
Yeah, it's going to be right. Well, and take the points had to come somewhere, because I think they were down 20-14 at halftime, and then with the 57 being the final score being 57-41, so some bigger points were put up in the second half. But you're gonna if you don't shoot the ball well in some of those big games, and you're playing a good team, and if they're playing well offensively, it's gonna be a difficult night. And the end of their day was at the 3-point line again. Though outstanding season, great Northern champs in a very good conference there. Finished 12-0 and 22-5 on the year. So just an outstanding year. Tough one though to you want to get that team the second time around because they had a good battle with the first time too.
And real quickly before we take a break, that game, and there have been others as well that I saw during the course of the playoffs. There are a number of areas where the seeding was not right. I'm sorry. I mean, Medford was outstanding this season, but the computer gave them the number one over 2 teams they lost to this year. And I think this kind of shows, again, that La Crosse Central, they proved it. They proved they are the better team. And they were going to state after beating New London 48-44. But it wasn't just this one. I saw a number both on the boys and girls sides. What are we learning right now with the computer system?
Well, I know, in talking to Mark Miller, one of the biggest things he added, which I don't know if that pertains to Medford's schedule necessarily or La Crosse Central possibly, is when you go out of state, you play a couple teams, especially teams over on the Minnesota border, when they're playing some of these, or down even on the Illinois border for the southern teams. You have to have you have to take that into account. I think if they go, that win-loss record should be added in there from that other team if they go get the win or get the loss to help them out. So I think that's one big thing that needs to be added. The other thing is, it's hard to figure out where that mathematically is going wrong. As long as, I guess, the team gets there, like La Crosse Central could probably be bitter if they didn't get there because they had to go through a harder road because they got a lower seed. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, sometimes you might roll in that sectional game feeling good, like we already had these guys, and we're coming in as a number-wise an underdog, even though they know we're a very good team. So I think I don't know exactly what.
But it also hurts it also hurts the teams that you play, though. I mean, say La Crosse Central should have been a number 1 seed or a number 2 seed. The team that they play in the regional final is playing really a higher seed than they should be.
Well, yeah, very true. I mean, I do think
I just think that
there should be an appeals process of some sort. They got to figure, because I don't know if you can fix the formula right now with the way they enter that into the computer system with the things they're taking into account. But maybe there should be an appeals process that somebody goes back through and looks at those. If you've lost to this team and your records are similar, why is it not kicking it out the way it should?
We have to take a break, but we're going to come right back and start our stretch of 4 consecutive guests. We got a lot of folks to talk to, and we're going to start off with the head boys basketball coach at Newman Catholic High School, Jeff Waldvogel, as he gets set for the state tournament on Friday. That's coming up next. It's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. And welcome back. It's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. Well, coming up on Friday, we will have high school basketball from the state tournament as the Newman Catholic Cardinals will take on Royal in a Division V semifinal bright and early. I think I'm going to have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get down there in time. I'm going to be ornery by the time I get down to Madison, but then it'll be a lot of fun. But the Cardinals and Royal, and to talk about Newman Catholic and their road to the state tournament. Head coach Jeff Waldvogel. And Coach, I know it's a very busy week, but congratulations and thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much. We just got done playing in a sectional final, and that was a great game, and we enjoyed every minute of it. So it was a lot of fun. You were on the call.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun watching it, too. It's always fun. I mean, both the games last week, Thursday and Saturday, with great crowds and great energy and great performances, just outstanding. And the thing about it is, let's start. I mean, this is your first season. You came in a little bit late. Came in, you knew you had a talented bunch. When you first got the job, what were maybe the first two or three things on your mind that you wanted to do, setting up the foundation for what this season was going to be?
When I looked at the numbers last year, I didn't like our free throw differential between our team and the opponents. At Newman, we had shot like 10 a game, I believed, and the opponent shot 19. So I knew that, number one, we weren't getting to the basket because that's how you get fouled. And number two, we were constantly in foul trouble. I did like our rebounding advantage. So those were the targets that I looked at, and those were the things that I wanted to really go after. I knew I had a very talented team, one that could take care of the ball, one that shared the ball well, one that shot the ball well, one that really played hard and together. So my focus was on those three things.
Coach, I know with the busyness that coaches have between game, film, practices, just making sure all the organizational things and all your ducks are in a row. From a fan perspective, it's great. I love watching your team. They're just so fun to watch how that when the extra pass comes about, or how dangerous they can be, or who's going to kind of go off a little bit, who's going to support that, and the way they understand the roles and all that. I guess my question is, because as a coach, you're caught up in the game. Do you ever get to find time to sit back and watch these guys and appreciate what they're? I mean, you do, but do you have the time to do that? Do you recognize that with them and get to see that all the time?
Yes. After the game, I'll go back and watch our team play, and there is an appreciation what I really have on the court. I have great leadership. I have really good players all over. I know that Mason and Isaac score most of the points, but as I look back on this season, I'm sure that we've had 4 different leading scorers at some time this season, and we have really good balance. So it's been a fun team to watch, and one that I've enjoyed working with.
It's been a really interesting season as well, because between your conference and your non-conference schedule, there's been so many great games, great matchups, games where your team had to step up. And you go back to the first game of the season against Northern Pines. Isaac hits a 3-pointer at the buzzer to lift you over what was a terrific Northern Pines team, and you go right through the schedule with challenge after challenge. As you look back, was there any moments during the season that you felt like, okay, this is, I'm starting to see things click the way that I want to, that things are coming together in a way that could lead to ultimately where you are?
I feel it was after the tournament down in Milwaukee, when we were down 54-40 at a half against a team that made it to the Division 4. I think they're the number 1 team,
yes,
St. Mary's Catholic. And we were down 54-40 at half. And going into the locker room, it was like, how did we stop these guys? And we talked about it at half. And we talked about what we wanted to do differently. And we came out and did things differently. We we were able to wipe out that 14-point lead and take a lead in the game. Now, unfortunately, down the stretch, we didn't make the plays to win the game, but I knew at that point that I really had a special team, one that never gave up, one that was going to compete into the end, and one that was going to be in every game.
Well, let's just looking at your strength of schedule over this season. I mean, we've talked about it with other coaches. We talked about it a little bit getting into the Pacelli game, just the number of adverse situations your team has had to fight through or control or take over because of your strength of schedule. I just don't know how that's a recipe for success when you can go out there and you're getting in these tough teams and you're beating them in OT on their own floor, or you're getting down to a last play when the game's tied, and then not to mention your conference schedule just built you in for just this physical toughness as well as this mental toughness, the way teams go to war in that conference every day. How big a factor has your schedule been this year to also add into your team's success?
Yeah, we had a late season flurry of games, and it started on senior night against a pretty good Prentice team that has regularly beaten Newman, the past years. And we put a lot of energy into that game, and we came out with a win, of course. And then the very next day, we had a quick turnaround down at just a game against a very good Platteville team that was 15-5, I believe, at that time. And then 3 days later, we went over to Columbus High School and played a really good Division III team, a game that seesawed late, and we ended up coming up short 86-81. And then 3 days later, we went over to Marathon, and as that gym was packed, it was a great atmosphere. It was a terrific game. Two of the Marewood's best teams going at it, and we had the ball down 3 with about 25 seconds to go and ended up missing a shot, and they went on to win that game. The very next day, we went down and played a very good Stoughton team, a Division II team. And, coming off on that trip down there, I'm thinking, we've just lost 2 in a row, and we're playing a really good Stoughton team. And even though we know these are good teams, no one on that bus wanted to lose. And I didn't. And obviously, we won that game, which was a great relief. I felt that kind of really propelled us coming forward, that we could finally pull out a big win against a really good team. And then, obviously, we had a game at Stratford, and then our tournament run began.
Looking at your tournament run, I think if you take a look at the games that you won, you played really well. But the regional final against Columbus, because last season Marshfield Columbus knocked off Newman Catholic in the sectional semifinals. There was probably the biggest crowd at Newman, from what I've been told, that they've had in a long time. How big was that game in the whole picture of what's been going on this season? Because I imagine that was one of those where it's sort of in the back of the mind for everybody all season long, and knowing that Columbus came in very highly regarded at the start of the season, to be able to slay that dragon, I imagine it was something that was significant for the guys.
Yes, it was. Honestly, I was tired of hearing of Columbus. I heard about them from day one. The guys had some concern for Columbus, and obviously when Columbus came up here, they were playing extremely well, and watching that game seesawed pretty good back and forth the entire first half, and then we took the game over late in the first half and was able to come out in the second half and start to separate. So that Columbus game was really important to us because of the history. And I think it meant more to the players. Obviously, it meant a lot to me as well, but it meant a lot to the players because they needed to slay that, as you say, slay that dragon.
Again, we're talking to Jeff Waldvogel, Newman Catholic High School boys basketball coach, here on Bow Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, as the Cardinals get set for their state semifinal against Royal on Friday morning. I think Jeff has a question.
Yeah, well, Coach, just looking at some of the players, you like you said, you've got some guys that they stand out as your scorers and they're this and that. One of the guys in the last couple of games that I've watched, just from my personal opinion, that I've really liked the way he's gone to battle is been Eli Gustafson. He's gone, he's ripping down boards. He's staying out of foul trouble. He's controlling he's controlling the big guy on the other team and making baskets when he needs to down there. I think it's just, if you can, it's kind of propelled the team again to take another level, even if there is another. You know what I mean? They're already at a level, and you just keep going forward. And I think his play has really stood out. Not that the other guys haven't done what they need to do too, but it's just helped the team continue to build and continue to be even more challenged to ever take a loss. It just makes you more well-rounded and tough.
Yes, Eli he's a big part of the game. Obviously, he's a good space eater down around the basket. He boxes out extremely well. When he puts his hands on that ball is ours. And then he makes good decisions to outlet it quick. These games are so interesting from the standpoint, in one game we're making a lot of three-pointers because that's what the other team, our opponent's giving us. The next game they're taking away the three-pointer, and we've got guys like Eli and Connor and these guys around the basket that are scoring and playing extremely well. We are a very well-rounded team that has 7 seniors, because I can sub Owen in when I need to. He did play in the Pacelli game. He played extremely well. And it's a great team that complements one another extremely well. They all know they all know the role, and they all play great together. And that's the fun part about this team.
And following that, how big, you alluded to it already a little bit in that answer, was how big is it been, when your team can adjust? If they have to go to win the game down low, we're going down low. We're getting to the basket. We're getting our free throw attempts. We're pounding a little bit, like against Gibraltar, where we didn't have a lot of outside three-pointers. And then another team, it's almost like your team knows, which is hard to get across, I think, in high school athletes. Number one, they all know their roles, which is really defined by the coach and the program, what they want out of it. And then number two, I think, they'll do what it takes to win. We're going to go beat you inside this game. We're going to go hit the outside shot. We're going to do it together. Guess what? Now we're making the extra pass. Now we got this guy driving the board, and they've adjusted to so many different styles, not only offensively, but I've seen defensively. Different type of defense that you've thrown a team. So I would assume you got to be very proud of that they're able to do it. It gives you such an arsenal to work with.
We talked about this on Monday, because after the game at Seymour against Gibraltar, there was a lot of celebration, and we didn't really meet after the game in the locker room. So on Monday, what I told the team I was most proud of is the fact that we run Gonzaga's offense, and there's certain things that we look for in that. And what I'm really happy about is I coached them to just take what the defense gives them. I don't tell them that they need to move from point A to point B or point C to point D. What they've learned, and that's the growth of this team, they've learned to take what the defense gives, and they take advantage of that. And that was on display the final 7 minutes over at Seymour. We literally scored on every possession. We answered their scores. They had cut it to 4 a couple times, and it was all in different ways. Mason went off of high pick and roll, dropped it off for an easy one to Eli, or Isaac went off a high screen and got to the basket and scored. It was a fun way. It was fun to watch the growth and the development in this offense that will be very difficult for any team to stop.
Let's talk about state. Number one, it's obviously a different environment, being in the big arena, bigger floor surface. How have you gone about this week getting prepared for Friday? We've
spent the last 2 days over at UWMC, and we'll be there tomorrow as well. The court is much larger. I've seen some guys profusely sweating and looked kind of beat after an hour of practice. But the good news is we're running the same exact stuff, and I can see them getting tougher. This is by no means, this is really a tough group, but I could see that they were getting worn down, but now they're not getting worn down as much after 2 days, and I'm hoping that's going to pay off when we get to the game come Friday morning. First off, congratulations, because for our listeners that don't know, this is the first time Newman's ever made state since being part of the WIA, which is just awesome for the school, for you, for the program, for the kids, for everybody involved. It's just a really cool feeling, really cool atmosphere. How's it been with this group? Because every time I see them, whether it's whichever sport it's in, they're always business. They're always about that next moment, go and get to it. So there's time for celebration, but I got to assume that they're ready to go and not be done and want to get it. So, it's hard because you want to enjoy this as much as you want to go down and continue to make those memories that can last forever. So what's their mindset this week, I guess, that you're seeing out of them? Oh, gosh, it's 2 levels up from the week prior. I mean, these practices, like on this large court, they're going harder than I've ever seen them go, and the court is much larger. So they know what's lying ahead for them, the big court. They know what's at stake, the chance to beat a good Royal team on Friday morning and get the championship Saturday. And honestly, they are putting in the time, they're putting in the effort, they're putting in the hard work, and they look real good. Look at the field completely. Obviously, you play Royal, but looking at this Division 5 field, what jumps out about the 4 teams that are competing in this tournament starting on Friday? The Royal team is a very good defensive team, one that rebounds extremely well and gets a lot of steals. They trap a little bit, and so we've got to contend with that. When you get to Chippewa, they got 2 guys that can really score, and they like to get up and down and have scored a lot of points. And then when we get to Fall River, they've got a terrific point guard. They got a nice big guy, and they got a kind of a similar team to what we have, kind of a well-rounded team. So as I size up the field, that's the way I would say it. A really good defensive team in Royal, one that plays a little bit lower scoring. We talked about that, how we need to prepare to be ready for that. And the good news is we have a few teams in our conference that kind of slow the ball down, and those teams make us uncomfortable. So we are definitely concerned about them.
Well, and Coach, I guess lastly, are these guys? It's got to be difficult, I think, to slow down and enjoy every. You know what I mean? It goes by quicker than you want. Is there little things along the way that you're reminding of? You got to enjoy the process and the journey as much as it is just to get down there and play. Because you're twofold. I think you're anxious to play and get down there and get into that game, because that's what it's about. And at the same time, you're one of the teams. You're one of the teams left. That's it that we're talking about. Is that it's a double-edged sword, so to speak, because you want to go get to that game, but you want to enjoy the journey too.
They're excited. You can see it. You can see it that they're enjoying the moment. They're proud. They're proud that they're one of the teams playing Friday at the Kohl Center. I'm proud to be the coach of this team, along with Coach Michael Huffman. These guys are a special group. These guys have been playing together since third grade, and they have great character. They're great competitors, and are really, really good basketball players that do some really nice stuff off the court for the community as well. So it's kind of extra special for me, because not only my dad also played at Newman. He was a three-sport athlete. I played some years of sports at Newman, and then I have family members that have played at Newman High School. So it's kind of been, this is kind of special for me in that regards as well.
Head coach Jeff Waldvogel of the Newman Cardinals. Number one, thank you for coming by. Number two, I can't wait to see you talk to the TV guys on Friday, because you've been developing your discussions with me throughout the season. I can't wait to see you on TV. I got to admit that, because I know how much you don't want to do it.
Exactly. It's probably going to be. It could be some short answers.
That's why I kept telling all year, you have to be ready for the TV. That's why you have to keep talking to me all season long. So
you have helped prepare me. I do a little bit better job with you than probably with some of them.
Hey, enjoy it. Looking forward to seeing your guys on Friday morning. And again, thanks for coming in.
And I'm happy that you're on the call.
Jeff Waldvogel, head coach of the Newman Catholic Cardinals. We're going to take a quick break and then come back with more here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes. Thanks again to Newman Catholic head boys basketball coach Jeff Waldvogel for joining us. And again, we are to our next to last show of the year. Next Wednesday night will be our final show of the season. So make sure you tune in, because you have to get your fill of it until mid-August. But tonight we are packing full of guests, and we're very happy to welcome back to the program the former head girls basketball coach at DC Everest High School, Matt Bolus. And Coach, thank you for coming on in.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Before we start, we'll talk about what you saw over at State last week. How many years have you been away from Everest? Because it all runs together as we get older, I tell you.
Yeah, it sure does, right? I've been out 2 years, so this was my second season out.
And I know I have this guy who sits across from me who stepped away as well. What's it like after you've been so involved in it at the high school level for as long as you did? Took a team to the state championship game, had so much success at DC Everest. What's it been like stepping away?
Well, Jeff, he was my inspiration. He told me how much he was enjoying his time away. So
I have no playbook for this one.
Yeah, right. It's different. You're so immersed in what your job is as a coach. You're with your team every night in practice and games, and then you go home and you watch film, and you don't really get to see other teams in the area unless you're watching film. And then it's just basically your conference and some non-conference opponents. So the most enjoyable part for me is, I mean, COVID was great for one reason, and that's because everything's streamed now. So I've been able to watch so many more teams and just kind of enjoy it as a fan.
I hate the competition, though.
Yeah, I'm sure, right? It's not good for you, but it was really fun. You know, like just having Jeff Waldvogel on a minute ago. I've been able to watch the Newman boys, and I enjoy watching good basketball. So just things like that, I've really enjoyed kind of branching out and watching a bunch of different teams and just being it more as a fan. And you're never wrong from your couch, right? So it's been a joy doing that.
What would you say would be because I don't know, you get asked that question all the time. Are you coming back? Are you doing once the couple of people that still might like you? Are you coming back? You doing that? Well, what do you? I guess my question to you, which I hear what do you miss? You got to miss this. I mean, there is
right.
But off the top of your head, what's some of the things you miss the most about it?
Well, I watched the Neenah Eau Claire Memorial sectional semifinal game at Everest, and I had a couple of people say, "Oh, what do you miss? Do you miss this?" And I said, "Yeah, right now I miss this." If you could say, "Hey, you're in the sectional semifinal and you've got to win 2 to get to Green Bay." I miss that, but I don't miss I didn't miss the grind. And you miss the kids, you miss the relationships. But being a teacher yet, I get those with my 10, 11-year-olds that I teach. I really enjoyed stepping away and being able to kind of spend some more time with my own kids and like I said, still being connected to the game, watching a bunch of them or listening to Chad. And so yeah, you get that question all the time, right? Even if you're out for 10 years, when are you coming back? When are you coming back? So somebody asked me that in the off season about a job that opened up in town. I said, they don't have enough zeros behind the dollar sign for me to come back. So I've enjoyed the time away, and I think once you're a coach, you're always a coach. Yep. So that's in you a little bit, but it's been a good couple of years off.
And this time of year, you probably can't help especially when you go back to Green Bay, to think back when you were actually there, winning a semifinal, then going on. I can't remember. It was 4 teams then, right? It's been so long now. I still remember it was 8 teams in D1, but back then you won a semifinal, then went on to play in the state championship game. What jumps out now after it's been? What is it, about 8 years now?
8 years.
8 years. Yep.
2015. Actually, 8 years. 8 years ago tonight. Not that I'm keeping track, but.
But what do you remember the most about that experience at Green Bay?
Listening to Jeff a little bit there, talking about when you get there, you gotta. Some good advice I got was you gotta step back and just take a look around, because you're so worried about we have to do this, we have to do this. And I think that was one of the things that I enjoyed the most, was being able to just step back once in a while and just watch the kids and how much they enjoyed it, the smiles on their faces, the crowd, our fans. That sticks out to me a lot. Friends of mine in the coaching world that were there, everybody wants to give you a high five, a pat on the back. And then I think just seeing the Everest community just get behind us, I think that was the most special thing. We were sharing a few stories this past weekend in Green Bay. The game before our semifinal game was Middleton and Divine Savior, and it was like 92-88, and Arike Agumbawale had like 55 points. And then we played Arrowhead next, and we went in at halftime. It was we were ahead 15-12. And I remember saying to Mike Matthews and Brian Engebretts and my assistants, when we come out at halftime or after halftime, nobody's going to be left but Everest and Arrowhead fans, because it was a quote unquote boring slugfest, and all the offense was before. But it is really a special time, and something that I know that I still cherish to this day.
Do you see a lot of, is it difficult to transition I know everybody's amped up and they're ready to go, and this is just a special moment, but, typically sometimes especially in those first games, you see teams, they struggle to shoot the ball well. There's a factor of shock and awe on the players a little bit, maybe as well as the coaches when they see everything. Is it difficult to transition from that regular season on that size of court, and maybe the crowds aren't always as big and there's not as much at stake? Did anything that you saw as a big transition from the regular season to the playoff runs?
Yeah, I think definitely the big arena has something to do with it. Our semifinal game was low scoring, and we had a pretty good shooting team. We were off to a slow start, and I think once we got comfortable and made a few shots, we lengthened our lead that first night. But I think just the entire day also. Just, you don't wake up in a hotel and then go to shoot around and then come back and have a team meal and then try to figure out what are we going to do here. And we had the second game on that Friday night, so we didn't tip off till about 8:30, 8:45 because I think it was a double overtime game. Maybe it was just single overtime, the game before us. So I think just their routine, just trying to keep them in a routine so that you can play your best. And then I think once the game starts, the size of the arena, the crowd, you can't help it. They're 16, 17-year-old kids. They're looking around like, whoa, this is really awesome. And so I think just all of that. But, you have to just get there and try to keep it as normal as possible, even though there's really nothing normal about it. I think that was what we did really well, is we just tried to keep our normal schedule of things and how we did things.
Does that shoot-around do a lot of justice for getting them ready for the court? I mean, the time that you have on there, is that enough time?
Yeah, I think it was good just for us to get out. And the group we had, they were pretty loose all the time. And once we got there, you could see the smiles and joking and laughing. I think if you get stuck in your hotel all day, you can sometimes get a little nervous. It was a weird day. Not many people know this, but I actually had to have an emergency root canal that day, and I was late to the shoot-around walkthrough because I was still in the dental office. So when I coached that game against Arrowhead that night, I couldn't feel my face.
Yeah. So Enrique wasn't the most painful aspect of that weekend.
Yeah, well, I think that was more painful.
Again, we're talking to Matt Bolus, former DC Everest high school girls basketball coach. Took the Evergreens to the state championship game 8 years ago tonight, so we found out something this date in history. But talk generally about high school girls basketball, because I think in some ways for Wisconsin, it's a bit of a golden era, because, I can't remember any time where you have multiple kids going to UConn. You talk about the gold standard in college basketball. You got multiple kids who are signed on to go to UConn. We got so many Division I girls basketball players in this state. Does it feel, in a sense, that this is it's been growing, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think
the talent level.
Absolutely. I think you're right on with that. I think girls basketball in Wisconsin is at a very high level right now, on the rise. And not just those top-end kids, but I think just a lot of kids. I think we have a lot of depth in the state. You see a lot of the kids going Division II, Division III. There's a lot of really nice players. And then, of course, you have the top dogs that, they're going to UConn. That's a pretty amazing accomplishment. I wish, a couple of those kids would stay in Wisconsin and try to turn the Badgers around. I know that Gracie Gresh from Green Bay, or from Notre Dame, she's committed to Wisconsin. She's only a junior, but I think that it's a really nice time in the state for basketball, and I hope that some of those kids start to stick around, because it'd be nice to have a winning program here in Wisconsin. Besides, Green Bay has been good for a number of years, and Marquette's been good. We've had some kids there. I know that there's a girl from Appleton East, Emily LaChapelle, who went to Marquette this year, and she's starting for them and having a nice year. So
remember seeing her as a freshman when she played West.
Yeah.
And it was like the second game of the season, and right away you can tell very quickly, can't you?
Absolutely.
When they're special like that.
Absolutely. You sure can. You can see kids at a young age sometimes that they've just put in a lot of time. They don't just happen to wake up and they're that good. They put in a lot of time.
When freshmen put up 30 in their second game, then it's like, I see why there's already been rumbles about the D1 schools hovering.
And let's jump to you said you spent your weekend at the state tournament, saw some of those games. Did you gravitate towards a certain division? Did you watch a wide variety of games? Some observations, I guess, that stuck out for you? Being coaching at Everest for quite a while, I always gravitate towards Division I and Division II. Those are some really good teams in each of those divisions. But there were some really good games with all the divisions. Watching Kewaskum had a really nice team. Laconia, obviously, they beat Aquinas, which doesn't happen very often. So there were some really nice teams there. The Division I games were great. Division II, I was really hoping to see, not that it was a bad game, but Notre Dame and Pewaukee Saturday night, I was hoping that was a little bit better of a game, but Notre Dame kind of showed why they're the three-time defending state champs. They kind of took care of business right away, and it wasn't much of a game, but just, really good basketball. The crowds were a little down this year, which was interesting. I don't know if it was a little weather-related, because we obviously didn't have great weather over the weekend, but it would be nice to see a little bit more. I do like the arena over there for girls state basketball. It's not so massive like the Kohl Center, so when you get a nice crowd, it's really loud in there.
I'm gonna throw out that hot button topic I like to talk about, because I still miss D1 quarterfinals. The one time that I was able to go down for D1 was in 2010 when West made it down there, and they played a great game in the quarterfinals, overtime against Middleton. And I just thought, the D1 quarterfinal Thursday was always so much fun. I think there's something missing, and I don't know whether that affects crowds or not, but I just think for the quality of basketball, and especially when we talk about, I think, the talent level in the state of Wisconsin going up, I think we're missing something. What are your thoughts? Because I don't think it's going to change, but it's always nice to vent if I have a microphone in front of me. So
yeah, well, you and I are on the same page there. I've always been an advocate for that, and have had some discussions on social media with a few people, and they think that that we're only worrying about the big schools and not the small schools, and I disagree completely. I think you can just add the 4 teams, and it just adds one session to the tournament. It doesn't start anyway until midday on Thursday. We used to start Thursday morning, so I'm not exactly sure why that happened. I think it's also giving more kids opportunities, and there's some really great teams out there. I'd love to see eight D1 teams go. I believe that Wausau West went in 2010. I remember what you're talking about there. They beat Middleton in overtime, went to the semifinals. No Wisconsin Valley Conference team has ever qualified for the state tournament since it went to 4, except for us, the one year. And when West was the last, I think Merrill had one right around 2010 too. Maybe it was the year before. Marshfield, I think, 1 year. But since we've gone to 4, it's really tough to get there. Not that it isn't at any of the other divisions, because it is.
But you look at the bracket. I mean, I went up to Superior for a game just a few weeks ago. You got Neenah and Hortonville in the east. You got Clare schools on the west. You got Hudson. It's quite a large section, isn't it?
Absolutely. That was we had a little gathering on Friday night over in Green Bay, and a lot of the coaches, they weren't talking about seeding that much. They were talking about how they wished the WIA could figure out a different way and not have predetermined groupings of teams, but kind of go more to where you're not exactly sure, who's going to be in your grouping, and try to really truly get the best 4 or 8 teams, whatever it would be, to state, because we're still kind of in that, sometimes it gets down to a conference tournament. In the postseason, you win a game and all of a sudden you're like playing somebody you played twice already, and not that's not going to happen, but I think the coaches, girls coaches anyway that I talked to, were hoping that maybe we can kind of advance to a point where we can mix up the groupings a little bit. The sectional that we're in around here, geographically, it's huge. And so I don't know that we couldn't do it a little more for some of those other sectionals and spread things out.
And speaking of the way WIA works things, I don't know how much you followed it or how much closely you've looked at it, so if it's not part of the, if you can't answer, let me know, but what do you think of the computer system versus the old seating meetings where you used to have to go in there and war it out a little bit?
Yeah, I really like the seating meetings, mostly because it's fun to get a bunch of coaches in the room and talk, and I didn't see in my years at Everest, whatever it was, 12 years or so, I didn't see a whole lot of dirty pool as far as somebody getting something they shouldn't. The math is the math, I guess, and I think this year we saw a little bit of craziness in certain areas. I know the Everest boys sectional, it was like a Wausau West boys sectional, it was like a 6 seed versus an 8 seed maybe or something.
It was 6 and 8
to go to state.
It was darn near 12 and 6.
Yeah,
it was an overtime.
So we kind of had some craziness there. I personally liked when the coaches did it, but I also don't think that's probably coming back. I think we're going to probably stick with this. I think the major complaint that I've heard from a bunch of coaches is they wish it was just a little bit more transparent as to how those seeds were come up with, or maybe if they released the rankings once or twice throughout the year, so they kind of knew where you were. One of the arguments I did hear this weekend, too, is some schools were going to have a hard time scheduling some non-conference games because maybe their record wasn't very good. And now teams are like, I don't want you on my schedule because it's going to bring my RPI or whatever they go by down, which that's unfortunate, too, because now we can deal with some schools having a hard time filling their schedule.
And I guess finally, I think you kind of touched on it. We haven't seen a lot of Wisconsin Valley Conference teams make it to state since your team did it 8 years ago. And this year, West was able to sneak their way after a good win up in Superior to get to the sectional semifinals. But again, we haven't seen too many deep runs by Wisconsin Valley Conference teams, and it feels like, especially the eastern teams like Neenah and Hortonville are a step ahead. What's your take on where girls basketball is here in central Wisconsin, especially the Wisconsin Valley Conference?
Yeah, I think that we've seen some of those bigger urban areas kind of dominate girls basketball here, like they have with boys for a long time too, with the bigger schools. I think basketball here is getting better. I think that kids need more opportunity and they need to play more. I'm a huge proponent of multi-sport athletes. I think that's important. But I also think that, one of the things that we have to do in basketball in this area is they have to play more, they have to work more, because you always, you don't get, like I always used to tell the kids, you don't get what you wish for, you get what you work for. So I think that some of those teams are really good in the eastern part of the state, in the Fox Valley, but a lot of those kids, they play a lot of basketball. And I think multi-sport athletes are great, but you do have to have a couple basketball first kids that maybe just play basketball or to get to that level. I mean, you look at the teams that make it to Green Bay, or even if you go the boys route and who makes it to Madison, there's a lot of scholarship kids or college kids or potential college basketball players. And if you don't have those kids on your team, it's really tough to make it a deep run.
Matt Bolus, former Evergreen head coach, thanks for coming in. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I love talking with you guys. So anytime you need a filler after the season's done and there's nobody else to get, I'm here for you.
Although you get a certificate because you're one of the only other coach to come back after you've retired and come back in on the show. Everybody else is current, so Chad will fill that out for you.
Yeah, there you go. We're going to take a quick break and then come back. Have our student athlete guest coming up again from Newman Catholic, heading to state, Jackson Fender. That's coming up next here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. And welcome back. It is hour number 2 of the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. I think we're setting a record tonight with 4 guests. I don't remember us having 4 guests previously.
Never had 4 guests.
So,
three was the most.
We had Jeff Waldvogel and Matt Bolus last hour. We will have Norbert Durst from WisSports.net talking about the girls' state tournament coming up in a little bit. But right now, our student athlete guest for this week from the Newman Catholic Cardinals, heading to the state tournament at the Kohl Center. Very happy to welcome Jackson Fender. And Jackson, thank you for coming in on what I'm sure is a very busy week.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's been busy, and there's a lot more to come.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about this season as a whole. It's been, obviously, I think it's a year where the expectations were there. You had 2 really good teams the last 2 years, came up short of the ultimate goal. But with all your seniors, with all the success you've had, what was the mindset going into this season? Maybe what were you thinking about? Was it a state or bust year, or you cannot think that way going into a season?
No, yeah, we knew we had expectations, but we still came in and played with a chip on our shoulder. And I think that's what took us to the state.
And how important has it been? Again, I watch you guys. You make the extra pass. You find the way. There's so many dangerous weapons out there on your team, from the different ways you guys can score to the defense that you play. And I think above all else, you play together and you play for each other. From what I watch as a fan, how big has that been? That this is your group. These group of seniors, these guys you battled with for so long. The importance of that. How much has that carried you through to the success that you guys found this season?
Yeah, it's great. We know all 5 of our starters. We can score 20. Each of us can score 20 points each game. If you shut Mason down, Isaac will step up. If you shut those 2 down, Connor will step up. It goes hand in hand. You shut one person down, someone will always step up, and that's what's kept us going and makes it easy to stay together with adversity.
For yourself, how difficult is it to play with what you call gunners? Because Mason and Isaac are guys that shoot the basketball, and yourself, you're a terrific outside shooter, but may not get the same number of opportunities. Do you feel extra pressure when you're shooting because you feel like maybe you don't have as many opportunities? Maybe you have to hit that first one in order to get more, because it's got to be a little different. Because I think with Isaac and with Mason, they know they're going to get X number of shots a game. And for yourself, what's your mentality on the court in terms of your opportunities to shoot the basketball?
Yeah, knowing I'm alongside 2 of the best scorers and shooters in the state, I know when I get my opportunity, I have to make the most of it. And my teammates trust me, and Isaac and Mason, they do a great job of if I've made a couple, they will go out of their way and look for me.
And real quickly, before I let Jeff back in, I know talking early in the season to Coach Waldvogel that you do have that green light. He wants you shooting that basketball. How much importance is that to know that your coach wants you actually shooting that basketball as well?
Yeah, it's great knowing having my coach behind me after a shot. Whether it goes in or if it misses, just on its way off my hand, I know that he's good with it. That helps the confidence a lot.
Well, and looking at your team and the success you're on, again, for our listeners that don't know what's going on, Newman's going to the state tournament for the first time in WIA history, which is a big deal and an awesome accomplishment, which should be applauded greatly. How big has your schedule been? I mean, you guys are challenged in the Merriwood, and you're challenged in your non-conference. How important has that been to already play in the big games? I mean, is there, other than Godzilla running out on the middle of the court at the goal, is there anything that can phase you guys? Is what I guess I'm getting at. You've been tested. How big a deal is that?
No, it comes into play hugely. In my opinion, the Merriwood South is the hardest small school conference in the state. And, I mean, we had a week towards the end of the season where we went to Columbus, to Marathon, and to Stoughton. All three of those teams, amazing teams, had great years. And just battling those battles and like seeing what it takes to go up against those teams, that sets us straight for the Division 5 level.
And also following along those lines, how big is it for your team, and again, in your opinion, the flexibility you guys have and the way you can play? It seems like you can match anybody's play in terms of the different styles. That probably comes hand in hand with the schedule you played and all the different teams. But how big a deal is that when you can win it from behind the arc? You can win it in the inside. You could win it offensively one night. You can play good enough defense to hold the other team in check. How important is that your team is so flexible in combating the styles of play that you see in the various teams that you guys go against?
Yeah, in the sectional final against Gibraltar, we actually only made 2 3-pointers the whole game, and we stepped it up and found the inside shot. We got there, and it's hard. It's hard to guard us. If you shut one thing down, we'll hurt you from something else.
Again, we're talking to a Newman Catholic High School senior, Jackson Fender, here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. We'll get back to the basketball and the state tournament in a few moments, but you're a multi-sport athlete, and 3 sports, correct?
That's correct.
Football, basketball, and baseball.
Yep.
You've already got one championship this year. Obviously, you won the 8-player state championship for the 2nd year in a row. Are you able to take the experiences you had in big games on the gridiron and use it to your advantage when you have a big game on the hardwood or on the diamond?
Yeah, it definitely comes into play there, where lots of teams you'll see in the first couple minutes of the game they'll be scared, and the coach will have to call timeout, say, all right, you're here, let's start to play. But we don't do that. We come to play right away.
What's it like to be a 3-sport athlete? Because obviously it takes a lot of time. I mean, you start when football practice starts, and of course there's always summer activities in all these sports. How do you go about trying to maintain some sort of balance within your life? Because there's really not a lot of time, especially when you make deep runs. But football goes right into basketball. Mm-hmm. Now basketball, well, we got a little snow, but you still go right into baseball. How do you try to go about having some balance in your life? Yeah,
it's definitely tough with the sports, not even like right after each other. It overlaps. Like the football season went into the basketball season, and the basketball season's going into the baseball season. And it just takes a lot of time management, always putting, of course, school first and then sports and whatever. It's hard. It's not easy.
So what do you do, just for the listeners, what's your downtime? When you do have downtime, what's things you enjoy to do? What are some of if you can get away from sports, get away from the books a little bit, and you have time to do that, what are some of your favorite things to do in downtime? If there is a thing as downtime, I don't know.
It's very little, but I try to spend time with my family, talk to them, usually talking to them about sports or school, and then just hanging out with the guys, just not having to worry about school or sports in the moment with them, just being with them in a different setting.
What's your favorite class?
Right now we have Lifetime Sports. It's a gym class, and it's all the guys on the basketball team and the football team. It's fun. It gets competitive.
So I was just gonna say it's got to be pretty competitive.
It's competitive. Today we had a mat ball game, like kids kickball, and there was some jawing going on. There were some questionable calls that nobody liked.
Obviously, having such a large senior group this year, it's got to be special to be able to accomplish a lot, and you've already accomplished quite a bit. And it sounds like within this group that you are close. Would you consider it an exceptionally close group of seniors?
Yeah, 100%. We've been classmates since 4K. We've been playing sports together since 3rd grade. I remember at the Y, we'd be playing flag football, and we were always involved and together.
And looking ahead, sometimes seniors are undecided and still looking at things. Just again for the listeners, what college have you decided to go, and do you have a route that you want to pursue in terms of a major yet? Have you decided on anything you want to find that next level of education in?
I've been accepted to lacrosse and the University of Minnesota, and I'm still deciding between those two, but I'm going to go into finance. That's the route.
We mentioned you play 3 sports, and I know that this is always the hard question because you don't want to annoy any of your coaches, but do you have a favorite sport of the 3?
It's usually within the season, but the favorite's probably basketball.
Why basketball?
That was my first sport. That's what my dad loved, basketball, and he kind of brought that upon me and my brother, who's younger, and that's from a young age. It's just kind of been like, all right, you're gonna watch this basketball game. We're gonna go to this game. We're gonna shoot hoops outside. It's just always how it's been.
How's your game changed since you got into high school and the varsity team at Newman Catholic? What are the areas that you've taken the biggest strides in? How are you a better basketball player this year than you were maybe a couple of years ago?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I'm not big right now, but I was really small, and I wasn't always playing with Mason, Isaac, Connor, Eli, Thomas. I was playing with other guys, and especially my early years of high school, I was on JV a lot, and my role was to be the point guard and to kind of be the Mason Prey of that team, and I've really accepted my role with the guys on varsity this year, and I've said, okay, that's going to be my game, and I've worked on exactly what I do.
Well, and jumping back to the game that's going to come up on Friday, how much fun has this been? The regional title, the sectional wins, knowing at that moment after you beat Gibraltar that we're doing something no other team has done in the WIA. Just I told Coach Waldvogel, and he alluded to what he's seeing out of you guys, but I just think it's got to be so hard because you want to slow it down and make it last. Yet you also want to get to that next moment of triumph and victory and take the next step in finishing what you started, so to speak. How's this week been so far? What have you enjoyed about it? What's been maybe a big surprise? Anything that's stepped out? Observations you've had?
It's going so slow. I can't wait for the end of the week and to play. I've just been so anxious. It's just been the only thing on my mind. And the support from school, friends, family, alumni, it's been great, and it's a good look for Newman.
And how about looking at Royal a little bit? What have you? I'm sure you guys had to start talking about, start looking at them a little bit. Anything that you see that stands out in their play that you're going to want to combat, or you got to know you combat against as you play that game against them?
Yeah, they definitely take pride in their game. They take pride in their defense, and they stick to what they're good at. If they're not going to change to us, they're going to do what they do, and we're going to have to adapt to them.
As a shooter, it's a different environment. I mean, a 17,000 seat arena. It's a bigger court. I know you guys have been practicing at UWMC this week, or I should say UWSP at Wausau, but I got to be right at that. But going down there, how much time do you get before the game itself? Do you get a shoot around down there?
I'm not sure yet.
Jeff, do you get one?
Yeah, they'll get. I don't know how long it is, but I think they'll get one down there for a little bit of time. I mean, half hour, 45 minutes is not a long time, I don't think. But they get a field to get for the rim, so ahead of time.
So is there any mental aspect that you're going to go in with to try to get as ready as possible before the game, or is it just going to be, hey, it's still 10 feet high and it's still, a basketball court and just going to focus on doing that?
I'm going to be relying on my muscle memory. I mean, I know it's going to be tough. The depth and just everything about it, it's going to be way different than the little Newman gym.
And I guess going into that game, what's the if you had to say that this is what do you think is going to be the major factor that's going to propel you guys to get through that semifinal into that championship game? What's going to be? This is going to be the clue that's going to hold us together.
Just keep playing unsatisfied. Like, yep, we're happy to be here, but we're going to make a name for ourselves here. We're not just going to be a one and done. And that playing hungry, that hunger and that chip on our shoulder, I think, is what's going to carry us to the championship.
Do you think see, for me as a person, being not a morning person, 9 o'clock would not be satisfying to me. Do you think about that, or is the adrenaline going to hit and this is our game and we're going to go get it? I mean, it's just it's a different time, and I think it's for both teams, so it's fair.
You don't have to wait around all day.
Yeah, but it's a different time to play a game when you're used to late times. Does that come into your mind, or you just want to get to the game and we're so excited to play, we could care less if it's 6 a.m. or 8 at night?
I've thought about that a little bit. I'm not exactly a morning person, but I'm thinking just knowing what game we're going into and how it could be my last game. I think I'm not even going to know what time it is. I'm going to be so ready to play.
Shall we ask the final question?
Yeah, I'll go if you don't mind. So we'll put it this way, because for our listeners, if you don't know, Jax has a younger brother, Quincy, that's a freshman. So let's take it one step further. You're a senior, you're graduating. You're unfortunately on borrowed time. There, you can't go back. We're not going to fail you. You've done well enough to pass, and you're going on to your next level after your sports are done and after you graduate from high school. As much as we like to keep you around, we got to let you move to your next step in life. But let's say you have to tell Quincy something that he's going to make his best moment of your 4 years in high school. I've done it, I've lived it, and we've done very well. Here's what you need to do. Here's my advice to you. What would you tell him?
I'd tell him that I'm telling what everyone says, and it's not a lie. It goes fast. And take pride in what you do. Like, if you're out of practice and coach yells at you, coach gets on you, you want to check out for the practice. You gotta keep going. You gotta know that all you have is 4 years. You gotta make every second worth it.
Number one, congrats. Already a state champion once. Try to make it 2, and who knows? Maybe you can make it 3 in the spring, huh?
Maybe.
But Jackson Fender, again, heading down to Madison with the Newman Cardinals. 9:05 tip-off at the Kohl Center against Royal in a Division V semifinal. Number one, thank you for coming by. And number two, good luck on Friday, and hopefully good luck on Saturday as well.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to take a quick break and then come back, have our fourth guest of the night. They just keep rolling along. We'll be talking to Norbert Durst from WisSports.net coming up next. It's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. And welcome back. It is the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes. Again, our next to last show of the season. Make sure you join us next week to wrap things up. Been another fantastic season. Been a fantastic night. Again, setting a record tonight with 4 different guests. Jeff Waldvogel and Matt Bolus in the first hour. Jackson Fender just joined us a few moments ago. And now to talk again about girls high school basketball. State tournament just wrapping up in Green Bay. We're very happy to welcome back to the program from WisSports.net, their lead girls basketball writer, Norbert Durst. And Norbert, again, really glad you could come back on the program.
Yeah, always happy to be on and talk high school girls basketball.
Well, number one, let's talk a little bit about the state tournament. I guess overall impressions. I think some of the impressions that maybe before we talk about specific games, how was the atmosphere? How were the crowds? The whole state tournament feel this past weekend in Green Bay?
You know, I think as a whole, I think it was a great feel. I think we had a lot of very good teams, high level of individual talent as well. And so I think anytime you can showcase that high level of talent you have in the state, it's really good. And, you know, I thought we had some really good crowds at the state tournament, too. You know, lucky enough to have some of those closer teams to help things out a bit with Hortonville having a nice crowd there. McFarland, I think they had the biggest crowd in Division II. So, you know, just having teams travel well, and sometimes when teams haven't been to the state tournament in a while, or maybe haven't won a state title, you get a little bit more excitement. And I think there was plenty of excitement around in the Rest Center and around Green Bay this past weekend.
Norbert, just kind of piggybacking off what you just talked about with the variety, I thought it was a good balance between a handful out of the 5 divisions. The 3 of those were first-time state title winners, and the other ones repeated. And I thought that that brings for an interesting mix, because you get those people that get their real first flavor of getting the taste of that, as well as these teams that have come to expect it as part of their program. Did one of the divisions out of all what you've seen stick out any better, or one maybe you looked more forward to just selflessly watching from a true fan perspective because you knew what they had within that the 4 teams in that particular division?
That's a very difficult question there, but I think if you're talking about maybe a Division 2, I think we as a whole, there's certainly teams that wanted to be there, but I thought that Pewaukee and Notre Dame would meet in that title game, so I think it's kind of how we expected it to shake out. It's just when you get there, things can happen differently. But, I think a lot of that's the fun part of the game. You see teams during the tournament, like Grafton defeated Beaver Dam in a regional final. Sometimes you chase ghosts a little bit. You chase some of those teams that just know how to win. And sometimes it's a matter of figuring out how to win and finding a way how to win at the state tournament, like McDonald Central that win the Division 5 state title. They have been there the last 2 years, and now the third year, the players get a little bit better, but you also just get a little bit more knowledge of the game at the state tournament, and it's obviously exciting there. And then when you kind of mix in some different styles of play, like Kewaskum playing Milwaukee Academy of Science in the title game in Division 3, it's how you can figure out how you can play your game and stay to your game and not jump into what the other opponent is doing. But I think we saw some really good games, but it's definitely always fun just to see those teams that, we expect to be there or that have been there, and also get that mix of the teams that are knocking off teams and showing it's their time to shine.
I thought actually maybe the 2 most interesting championship games were D3 and D4. Start with D4. Laconia beat Aquinas 64-51. It was a game where I think if those teams play 10 times, you may split it. It was a night where it just felt like Aquinas was not hitting some shots they normally do, and I thought Laconia really stepped up big time in that game. I thought that was one of the more impressive performances, way that they were able to control Aquinas in a lot of ways. But at the same time, it felt like maybe that was a day where Aquinas missed a lot of shots they normally would make.
Yeah, I think it went both ways there, and I think in the end it came down to Laconia's depth. With foul trouble, Sammy Davis fouling out there, 10 minutes to go in the game. But Laconia's depth has been what they've been so great at all year. They lost some games, but they played good teams, and I just think it came down to their depth of the game. And Macy Janarski was awesome for Aquinas, but some of those kids from Laconia, they've been playing ball a long time together. Just a group of sophomores where you can maybe point at Tierney Madigan, maybe coach's daughter, Morgan, there to be maybe a couple of their top players. But, they got 6 or 7 kids that can play, and I think that also shined at the state tournament. Teams that had a little bit more depth were teams that won when they got there because, foul trouble, and, sometimes it just one player just isn't playing as well that day, and when you have depth, it's very helpful.
And also that D3 game, I really enjoyed watching that one as well because there were so many turns in the second half. You saw Kewaskum up by 9, then they took a quick 11-point lead in the second half, then a 12-0 run for Milwaukee Academy of Science. Kewaskum came back with 11 points in a row, then Milwaukee Academy of Science came back to regain the lead as well. I thought one of the most interesting strategic moves during the course of the weekend was with Milwaukee Academy of Science pulling the ball out with about a little less than 3 minutes to go. It felt like... that was, again, that one kind of bit them, didn't it?
Yeah, it definitely did because, in that game, that's Kewaskum's game to do that. They played right into Kewaskum hands there, and, that's the part, too, where you get to the state tournament and, you want to just continue doing what you did to win games, but you also feel that, we're this close to a gold ball, and maybe if we sit on it a little bit here, we can, win this game. But, those are the tough decisions coaches make at the state tournament. But in that situation, especially the way Kewaskum was playing, because he played right into their hands, because I just thought the game plan that they put together for that game was perfect. And, they rebounded well, and then at the end they made their free throws. And anytime you make free throws down the stretch, you're probably going to win the game.
Again, we're talking to WisSports.net girls basketball head writer Norbert Durst here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. I know Jeff looks like he's ready to ask a question.
Well, Norbert, I guess I'll jump to the D2 and D1 games. I watched Pewaukee in the semifinal and just impressed with their young talent and the way they controlled themselves. And every time they mentioned a player, it was a sophomore or a freshman most of the time. And then for Notre Dame, to take it to them, get their third state title, they go on I think they lost maybe their first game of the season, then they won 29 in a row after that. I thought that was a big deal. And then just in the Division I, Kettle Moraine in the championship, looking at some of the stats and the write-ups you guys had against Brookfield East, that Brookfield East had outscored them 70-2 off turnovers. They beat them 20-8 in the paint, and Brookfield East still had 5 less turnovers. And Kettle Moraine wins. I mean, list all those stats. Kettle Moraine should have won, and then they repeat as champions. So I think those are some of the things that stood out, I guess, in the D2, D1 games for me.
Yeah, I guess we'll just start with D1 since we're just fresh there. The defense of Kettle Moraine, I think, came down to the end. When you put Grace Grholski on Annika Fleemer, who is a very good high school player, going D2 to play at Maryville. Grace Grholski is going to West Virginia, but putting her on Fleemer really just shut her down. And she's the 1 or 2 number scorer on the team. Chick Kelly, also one of their top players. But when you make some of those other kids step up in a title game, certainly very difficult. They just they hit a couple more threes in that game, and I think they're just a team that has, they were the defending state champions. They know how to grind out wins. They can score a lot of points if they need to, but they also know how to grind out wins and get rebounds. And, again, a very well-coached team. But, as we get to the state tournament, most of them are. But Todd Hansen's done a great job there. He spent a number of years at Pewaukee before going to Kettle Moraine. He is a Pewaukee alum, and sometimes it's just time for a change, and it's worked well for both teams, so that's very exciting. But as we talk about Division II, that one was difficult. I thought it could have went either way in the title game, and I think the length, probably was the difference, and it's something I thought maybe would be the difference in the game. Just Pewaukee just doesn't have a whole lot of length, and they usually can get away with it just because they're so good with their guard play, but I thought Notre Dame did a good job, using that to their advantage. They have Gracie Gresh is taller than most of those kids on Pewaukee's team, and they also have Kai Waldrop coming off the bench for them. And they've won what is just an insane amount of games lately. They joined Beaver Dam, Milwaukee Vincent, Flambeau, Cuba City, and Milwaukee Washington as teams to three-peat, which is incredible, especially thinking they could win another one in a row. And because they got just about everyone back from that team, and Pewaukee's got just about everyone back from their team. So we could see Pewaukee and Notre Dame a third time in a row next season. So it's just very exciting in Division II, just because when you got that high level of talent, it's really cool to see at the state tournament. And that's not even talking about how good McFarland was, I think, in their game against Notre Dame. Tegan Mulaney, I think, showcased how good she really is. She is a true high-level talent out of McFarland. She had nearly a triple-double in that game, and she just could see over that Notre Dame defense, and it's something that Notre Dame hasn't dealt with all season, or really in the past 3 years in most of their games.
Let me ask you this, and again, I don't mean to open up a can of worms here, but I thought the semifinals, both in D2 and D1, were outstanding. The tournament started off very slowly with those semifinals in D5 because they were blowouts, and I still think we're missing something without the D1 quarterfinals. It feels like, especially now, as you talked about, the high level of talent in girls high school basketball right now in the state of Wisconsin. We're seeing multiple kids going to UConn, for goodness sakes. I mean, it's really something else going on right now. Is there any thought that somehow we can get back to somehow getting an 8-team Division I field?
Well, there is talk to add 2 more teams to Division I, so it'd be 6-team field for that. I think it has a lot to come down to the WIA's their contracts with the TV rights, so they couldn't add another day currently. But I believe there is some talk to add 2 teams to Division I. And that would change a lot for those other divisions too, because there would be some enrollment changes. So the the success factor is something that they've talked about recently too. That could be coming into play soon. Maybe not next year, but the year after. And that's really going to make a lot of changes to these divisions year in and year out. So it could make things interesting moving forward. And then that's not even talk about that thing that a lot of people talk about lately is the shot clock. And I feel like that's on its way as well.
Do you see, just from what you witnessed at this year's state tournament, is there, maybe a certain player or a certain team you're already excited to see? I mean, some of the things I guess that stood out. One of the things that stood out for me was just the number of young players when they were. This person's only a sophomore. This team's built around this class that's younger. It just holds well, I guess. They're already down there now doing some damage and getting comfortable. What is it going to be when they have 2 more years to work with their team to get down there 2 more times in a row? Any team or players you're excited to see going forward that you got to watch this weekend?
Well, definitely Notre Dame and Pewaukee. I believe they play the first game of the year next season, and I think that'll be up in Green Bay, and I plan to be at that one. I mean, it's hard not to go to a game, two of the best teams, not just in their division, but the entire state. Laconia and the Prairie School, if they're in the same sectional next year, I think those are 2 of the best teams in Division 4. They're just, like you mentioned, just so many young teams. Cuba City had Aquinas on the ropes in a sectional final and lost, and they're a young team. So we could be seeing them at the state tournament. That's a team we've seen, a number of times at the state tournament. I believe they've won. Christina won 9 state titles or something like that with them. And one thing to mention too, Sarah Rohde for Notre Dame. She is now one of just 4 coaches in girls basketball state history with at least 5 state titles. So, and that's just incredible. Thinking that, I mean, what has she been there for about 15 years and won back-to-back, won back-to-back once and then three-peated. Obviously, when you're a private school, people are going to chatter a bit about them in Division II, but I think some years you can argue Division II is just as good as Division I, just because of the high level of talent in both divisions. But, just excited about all divisions as a whole, right? Just because of, it's just, I see so many games. I think I got to 93 games counting the state tournament this season. So I just see a wide range of games. So it's just a bit of everything. But, it's nothing better than Pewaukee, Notre Dame, what we got rolling out right now for Division II teams.
Again, we're talking to Norbert Durst from WisSports.net. I'm going to ask you an unfair question right now because we heard that KK Arnold is the Miss Wisconsin for this Miss Wisconsin girls basketball for this year. If you were to get your crystal ball out, who do you think will be Miss Wisconsin girls basketball next year? Because there's so many talented players out there.
Well, Allie Zabel's probably on the top of the list just because, I mean, she's going to UConn. But Tegan Mulaney, especially showing what she did at the state tournament, because for me personally, maybe it's one of those things that maybe I saw her play a little bit too much because sometimes you see a player, a team, and, maybe you pick through them a little bit more, and they play teams that were a little bit smaller than them throughout the regular season. Next year, that'll change when they move to the Badger, which will be good for them. But, she's up there on that list. Taylor Stremlow is going to be she's one of the better juniors in the state. She's at Verona. But, the top of the list is very nice. And I didn't even mention Gracie Gresh, who has won 3 straight Division II titles. So, I mean, it's a very good class, to say the least.
And I'm going to go back to what you said, so much talent right now in girls high school basketball. And I'm going to ask you about here in central Wisconsin because, again, it's been a little bit of a struggle. We had on the program earlier former Everest coach Matt Bullis, and he was the last Wisconsin Valley Conference team to make it to the state tournament when they made it to the state final 8 years ago. It just looks like the hill keeps getting pretty steep for the teams here in central Wisconsin, especially when you look at the amount of talent and I just think the great resources we see in the Fox Valley that you compete with in these sectionals each year. Any suggestions in terms of how the central Wisconsin teams in the bigger school divisions can take a step forward?
Well, most of it's always starting from the youth. So I'd say you got to get down there and start grinding with your youth programs because that's where you get kids. I mean, you can have talent when they get to high school, but if they're not skilled and ready to play, I mean, it takes them a couple years to develop as a high school player. So that makes things challenging. And then, I think just going out and playing good teams. I think one of the big things right now that coaches are talking about, I heard it a lot at the state tournament, seeding. They want to know exactly how the formula is. And it's just, for me, it's play good teams because it's going to prepare you. And I know that if you do that in a lot of situations, it might not give you the better seed. But in order to be prepared to beat a team that might be better than you or, seeded higher, you got to play teams. And I think that's the big thing. But, skill development at the youth level is important. And it is difficult for some coaches to find help and good help at the youth level. But that's where it starts because you mentioned that the Fox Valley right now is just, it's so dominant. Nearly that whole conference is able to beat teams in the top half of other conferences. So that's just showing how good that league has been this year and the past, number of years lately.
And Norbert, one other, I guess, question along those lines. Do you see anything that, from the old time where the coaches sat down in those seating meetings and kind of barked it out of who should end up where versus the computer system? We hear so many times from some of the coaches we interview or people we talk to throughout the season that there's a lot of things that they really like about the computer system, but still some things that they feel might be tweaked. In your conversations or in your thoughts or opinions based on the amount of basketball you cover, do you see anything that still needs to grow under that process to just try to, again, as everybody tries to make better things for high school basketball?
Yeah, there's definitely tweaks that I think they're going to be made every year going forward because there's certain like the head-to-head issues at times. It's got to be looked at a little bit more probably. And also I think there needs to be a way to say when you play up or play down, like. If you play down and play a good team, I don't think they should take that away from you. But if you play up and, type things, like I think it needs to be weighted a little differently. Again, if you play up and play a bad team, I don't think you should get rewarded for it either. But I think tweaks like that would help it. But, it could just be challenging with some of those out-of-state issues. And for the Milwaukee area, for teams that don't play all WIA teams, so then they have a record that they get a seed that's really not accurate upon who they are. So sometimes it's maybe they just need to think about an eyeball test at some point to fix just noticeable things. But I know they want to let the computer do most of that. But I do think that they're working to make things better as we go into the next year, and hopefully it continues to get better. And because for coaches, I think there was a lot more questions at the state tournament, maybe even as they were during the regular season. For those ones, because I'm maybe not as for the initial playoffs, not as like prone to listen to them. But Cutter Moraine got a 3 seed, won the state title. But sometimes you just end up playing teams that they maybe just didn't play that many good teams, and their sectional wasn't that good. So that's kind of how it shakes out in the end. But I think there will be changes made. It's just probably going to be a matter of time, and hopefully the coaches can be patient with that.
Jeff, anything else for Norbert?
No, I appreciate all your insight and all the coverage you do and what you do for high school basketball, because I think this is such a great sport for all our high school sports as well as boys and girls. It always needs to have a face and a voice, and people I hope always appreciate how it's played at that level, and the teams and the individuals and the coaches and all the time and efforts they put in.
Norbert Turtz from WisSports.net. Again, Norbert, thank you very much for the time, and enjoy a little break here. I know that it never really stops, but do appreciate you and your report from the state tournament.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on.
We'll come back with one more segment to go. Wrap things up for this evening. It's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. It's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO. Now it's only Jeff Gress and myself after 4 consecutive guests.
Take a deep breath.
We should have sold tickets tonight. Could have made some good money with the admission here. But thanks again to Newman Catholic head boys basketball coach Jeff Waldvogel, former DC Everest girls basketball coach Matt Bullis, Newman Catholic senior Jackson Fender, and from WisSports.net, their lead basketball writer on the girls' side, Norbert Durst. So again, I think we hit them all pretty well. 4 for 4. Good stuff from all 4 of them.
Well, it's a nice balance. I mean, you got Coach Waldvogel and Jackson giving insights into their journey right now and what the team is feeling and what they're looking forward to, and yet some unfinished business down at the Kohl Center. And then for Coach Bullis, he goes and watches and observes some of those games and to give us some of his insights, opinions from his experience and time and his expertise as a DC Everest girls coach, as well as what he's seen now and sat back and looked at. And then Norbert Durst gives us a feel for some of the things that we don't get to see or cover as much because it's teams all over the state. But again, I think it all culminates back to why high school sports is such a neat thing, and that's why you got to get out and go see those games, because being in that atmosphere, it's a lot of fun to watch, and a lot of neat things these athletes and coaches and programs do.
WIAA State Boys Basketball Tournament, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at the Kohl Center in Madison. And the Resch Center is a wonderful venue for the girls' state basketball tournament, but there is something still, I think, about going to Madison, seeing the big W out on the court at the Kohl Center that's going to make for a great weekend of basketball.
Right. I think it's just from anybody that's ever played or coached or been part of a state championship to see these bigger floors. Whether I was fortunate enough to go as a player in '93, and we played on the Mecca, and we thought it was cool just jacking NBA shots and warm ups. It's fun. It's just a fun atmosphere to be in. You because when you're down there, if you've never experienced that or been part of that, you're treated like a little bit of royalty. It's a different flavor. Like, hey, come in here. We're so proud of you. You're getting pats on the back for the players. It's just such a great experience. And then to get and go do that on that different court in front of that, it's what everything should be for those guys, and it's definitely well earned.
Royalty. So let's jump right into Division 5. No pun intended. It's Royal, the number 4 seed. 22 wins and 7 losses, takes on the number 1 seed Newman Catholic. A game that will be broadcast right here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. 8:40 a.m. for the pregame, 9:05 for the opening tip. I think Newman Catholic earned that number 1 seed. You said it earlier when you were talking to the coach and also to Jackson. The conference they play in, the level of competition for the non-conference, to be 25-4 against that record is outstanding.
Well, right. You can't. You did the right formula. You went and played just some outstanding teams. You strengthened yourself. I think it's all about the different looks you can get from the offenses and defenses teams will throw at them to the adversity you face. Whether you got to win one on a last-second shot, whether you're battling back in OT, whether you things aren't going a certain way and you got to adjust to the style of play of the other team. For Newman versus Royal, Coach Waldvogel and Jackson both said it. They're going to hold to what they think is their form. There's something that got all these teams here. So I think there comes a crossroads within these games and within these moments. Are we going to tweak something? Are we going to throw something a little different? Are we going to put a wrinkle in there? Or are we a firm believer that our system is better than theirs? I mean, those are the two routes you have to go and you have to check. And for Royal, it sounds like they're going to be a defensive-minded team and kind of stick to what guns have got them there. And for Newman, they're fast-paced. They move up and down the floor. They can throw a variety of things at you, and they can hurt you in so many different ways. I think that's one of their great attributes, too, is they're within that senior class, pound for pound, they're deep within that group and have a lot of different styles of play. So I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. But getting back to your original point, a well-deserved number 1 seed and an outstanding record for the season.
Second Division 5 semifinal should be a good one. McDonald Central from Chippewa Falls, 28-1. Fall River, number 3 seed, 26-3, and perhaps Fall River had the most thrilling sectional final to win it in overtime. Boy, you talk about pressure basketball, sectional final to earn your ticket to state, and they were able to pull out a big win.
Yeah, for Fall River, definitely build some momentum going into it, because you get a game that could easily send you home when you're in those overtime games, and to have your season extended, and they're sitting at a 26-3 mark, and it sounds like they have a big kid on the team, and from some of the other people that have observed the brackets closely within the 4 teams that are left here, says Fall River is a very good basketball team there. For McDonald. I saw them play really. It was either their first or second game of the year against Wausau East. They had a nice balanced attack. A couple Like one of their key players, there was a guard that was strong. You didn't get to see much play. He went down with an ankle sprain early, but they had a lot of nice pieces to the puzzle, and they've played well. A 28-1 mark is obviously very good, and I think that 2 versus 3 seed is going to be a war. I mean, but there's also, like we've talked about earlier in the show, there's all these other factors. You've got, like Jackson mentioned, you have to come out and get your ray in a very big open environment behind those baskets. Most teams in that first game shoot significantly better if they get a second game at state, because they've just learned how to play on the floor versus the size and depth and the conditioning they need to be in, and what little tweaks they need to make along, not only in their individual games but in their team game as they get more comfortable out there on the floor. And the teams that seem to do that faster, to get more comfortable real quick, seem to settle into their own, which can make a big difference and determine the outcome of those games.
Division 4, game number 1 on Thursday night. St. Mary Catholic, number 1, 26-2 against number 4 Kenosha St. Joseph, 18-10, and then game number 2, 26-2 Luther, the number 2 seed, against number 3 seed Whitehall, 22-6. Just based on the records, St. Mary Catholic has been good all year. Luther, 26-2 as well. Kenosha St. Joe's, I think, plays in probably a pretty good conference, I would imagine. So that has them prepared. And then Whitehall, 22-6.
Yeah, and I think to get there, they have to come through some pretty good teams. Usually, you have to get through St. Catherine's down there of Racine, and not a lot of easy teams. So for them to make it is probably been battle tested. Being honest, St. Mary's is the only team I know a little bit about, because we watched them play Newman a little bit, and I would they're if you tell me they're number 1, they're number 1 because they just play well. They're balanced. They have a lineup where they've got some length to them. They got kids that can shoot the ball exceptionally well, which I think will never put them out of the game. And then that puts a lot of pressure on the other team when you're trading 2s for 3s. And all year long, they've shown consistency with that 26-2 mark, and not a lot, to say that they gave Newman one of their 4 losses, that shows a lot too, I think, about their team.
Division 3, Thursday afternoon session, 1:35 tip. Number 1 seed West Salem, 27-1. Number 4 Milwaukee Academy of Science. Their girls made it to state, and their boys make it to state, 18-6. Game number 2, number 2 seed Brilliant, 27-1. Number 3 seed Lakeside Lutheran, 25-3.
Well, I guess the first team that stands out to me is Milwaukee Academy of Sciences. Last year, they lost in the Division 4 championship, and that was the group I had to look back on their roster, because there was a team in last year's state title games, and I'm like, I think it was them, and they had a ton of freshmen and sophomores in their lineup. I mean, their starter was maybe made up of 3 freshmen and 2 sophomores for the lineup. So now they jump up a division because their school obviously gets bigger, and they're still doing the same. And they come in there with those kids another year of experience and things like that. For West Salem, last year they lost, I think, they might have lost the championship, or did they win it last year? Okay, one or the other. Anyways, they made it to the championship for sure, and now they're back as the number 1 seed, 27-1. For Brilliant, I think for West Salem lost the championship now, I'm sure, because Brilliant lost to West Salem last year in the semis. So both those teams now, West Salem's 1 and Brilliant's 2, both at 27-1 marks, looking to jump back in that and make a run at that Division 3 title game.
Division 2, Pewaukee, again, a team school that made it on the girls' side, made it to the state championship game last weekend. Well, they're the number 1 seed on the boys' side in D2, 25-3 against number 4 seeded Nicolay at 24-4. That will be played on Friday afternoon at 1:35, followed by number 2 Lacrosse Central. We talked about them earlier. A very impressive win over number 1 seed Medford in the sectional semis. They're 23-5, and they play number 3 seeded Whitnall, who is 24-3.
I think it's going to come down to that 1-2 seed again, because I think in the championship you're going to find both those. I mean, Pewaukee's 28-0. They won it last year with some of the players that they have, and they're undefeated and returning right back there with the same expectations. For Lacrosse Central, they played well. We know what Medford has, so we got a little bit of a comparison factor for a very good Medford team that they beat twice. Last year they lost in the state championship to Pewaukee, so I think those 2 teams will show up right again and duke it out with Pewaukee being a favorite.
Division 1, number 1 seed, undefeated. To go the whole year undefeated, very impressive for De Pere. They'll take on another returner from the girls' side, Kettle Moraine, who won the state championship in D1 on Saturday in Green Bay. Well, the number 4 seed on the boys' side, 18-10 on the season. Game 2 on Friday night, number 2 seeded Arrowhead, 26-2 against number 3 Nina, who survived that wild bracket, a number 6 seed in the bracket, 18-10 on the season, but earning their trip to the state tournament.
Yeah, so Nina made it down there. They're the defending champion from last year. Obviously, they've got some more losses this year, but again, in a battle-tested Fox Valley to fight through a very difficult sectional. De Pere's going to be the heavily favored. I don't know a ton about them, but when they talk about that side of the state and the best teams in Division I, De Pere's names comes up quite a bit, and it shows in that 28-0 mark. And to have an unblemished record in a state title, that means you had one heck of a season.
And I guess to wrap it up here tonight, do you think Newman will do it?
Well, I
know you're biased.
I am biased. Number one, I hope they do because those kids are great. I enjoy. When I was their teacher, I enjoyed that. I enjoy seeing them in the hallway. I enjoy seeing how they interact in our school for our school community. They're overall great kids, and they've worked really hard. And this just culminates and it propels from other sports, and it propels from who they are and how they've. Kind of, developed and made themselves into these exceptional basketball players. So from a selfish standpoint, I definitely hope they do. State titles don't come easy. They're well earned, and there's so many factors from the mentality you take into the game to little things like that can come into play of how you shoot the ball in those games. More free throws made, less turnovers. Are you accustomed to the size of the court? Who shows up first? I think if they go out there and they get those leads, they're very difficult to beat. Newman is not a team that I think you can press effectively. And I just think they have so many weapons, and they've shown it all year long. When you go after somebody, the next person steps up, and they've got, like Jackson pointed it out, they've got on a given night, one of those 5 starters can score 20 points if you give them too many looks and untouched looks with good shot selection. So I think they can definitely do it. They've earned the number 1 seed. They've got record-wise, they're as good as any of those other teams in the field, if not better. So I hope they do, and I think they definitely can.
Well, join us next week. One more show to go. We'll wrap things up next week, talk about the boys' state tournament and a whole bunch more. Enjoy Madison.
I will, and I'll try to come up and say hi, and you enjoy it too.
That's Jeff Gress. I'm Chad Holmes. Join us again next Wednesday, 6 till 8. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio 98.9 and 1230.